In this Process Simulator Professional training video, we'll show you how to pass a parameter to a subroutine. Normally, when we call a subroutine, we call the subroutine by name and we use empty parentheses after the subroutine's name. Instead of using empty parentheses, we could actually have values within the parentheses. These values could be real or integer numbers. They could be attributes or variable values or some other expression. In this case, the model that we're using has attributes listed, and one of the attributes is A color pages. So how many pages does each product have? So if I have a job coming through and it's coming through different machines, it may take longer based on the number of color pages when it's going through color printing. So I can use that value within a subroutine to actually calculate how long the process should take based on the number of color pages. So if I were to create a subroutine, I will use the same subroutine we used in our last example, sub-factored time here, and it's returning a real value, a calculation that it's making for how long it takes. But now in my parameters here, I have defined a parameter that I'm calling P page count. I'm just throwing a little P in front of the name to remind me that it's a parameter it's looking for. And this will be an integer value. How many pages are in this job? And so that's a parameter that the subroutine will be expecting when it goes into its logic here. So the logic itself is, again, local variable defined. And that local variable now, instead of just being a normal distribution based on hard-coded 30 minutes here, the page count is going to actually be the number of minutes. So we're saying normally it's about a minute per page. So if it's a 10-page job, it's going to take about 10 minutes. And if it's a 30-page job, it'll take about 30 minutes. So whatever the page count is here, and it will receive this value at the time that the subroutine is called, we'll give it a value. This value will be received, will be used as part of the calculation for how long the process is going to take. And then the calculated time is the local variable time will be returned back to the logic that calls the subroutine. In this case, if I go back into my color printing properties here, when I call that subroutine, sub-factored time color pages is the attribute value that I am passing in as my parameter to be used in this calculation here. If I did not have this already typed up and in my example logic here, if I were to right-click, I could go to Subroutines, sub-factored time, so I can pick the subroutine. And because this subroutine is expecting a page count parameter, it throws the parameter name in here. So it automatically says, hey, we need a page count parameter. And I could choose to either hard code it, like I could say, oh, use 30. Or I could say, oh, use 50. Or I could use an attribute value and just say A color pages for my attribute value. So I can choose what attribute or what variable name will go inside the parentheses to be passed to my subroutine. I could do that here at color printing. Then I could come over to binding and I could use the same parameter, or I could switch it to a different parameter. If I had an attribute for total pages and I wanted to pass that, I can pass different parameters from different locations, and whatever value is passed will be the value that goes into the calculation for the subroutine. So that is one way you might use parameters to pass values into a subroutine to be used for the calculations that are necessary.